Good day and welcome to the Announcements Weekly Wraps. I'm Web Governor, and as usual, what we do is go over a couple of stories of the week that may affect you in your investments going forward, and end up with a little segment on tech/AI. Our three stories of the week are going to be as follows. It's going to be a little discussion on the current crisis in the Middle East, a look at US CPI, and a look at Chinese stimulus. In our tech segment, what we're going to do is we're going to have a discussion about the recent video from Mr. Beast, a popular YouTuber, regarding this, fake videos created by AI. So let's start off with the stories of the week. I've done a presentation this week, almost 50 minutes long, on the current crisis in Israel-Palestine. And I think if you want to get into more detail about that, go look at that presentation. It came out a couple of days ago. It's on the same YouTube channel as this one. It's the Ransom's YouTube channel. But let's just talk about what is happening with regards to that particular crisis and how it might affect you. Firstly, despite the humanitarian issues involved, etc., because Israel-Palestine really does not affect South African investors to a large extent. The only way it will affect you is if the conflict expands either into, Iran, which is, I think, the big danger, and possibly also maybe it expands to places like Egypt or Saudi Arabia, something like that there. The big danger is an expansion into Iran. The reason being is there's a thing called the Straits of Hormuz. It's an important piece of sea that is key to the global economy. It's like an artery in the body. You don't notice it until it's damaged. The Strait of Hormuz is a key trade route. Roughly, almost 90% of all the natural gas and oil in the Gulf goes through that particular, bit of sea. In total, we're talking about a third of the world's natural gas and about a fifth of the world's, 20+% of the world's, oil goes through that particular, bit of sea. The economies it affects India and China. India gets, 2/3 of its, natural gas from that thing. China gets basically 45% of its natural gas and oil, spent on that particular trade route. To give you an example of the size, I think back in 2021, China spent close to $130 billion, on oil and gas that came via that route. You cut that thing down, you basically stop the transport of oil and gas through that particular bit of sea. China, India, and much of Asia is going to be very badly affected. It would be devastating to the global economy. We in South Africa would feel the after effects of that because, of course, if oil and gas prices rising are going to be negative for us as well. And I'm talking about a significant rise. We're not talking about what happened with Russia. We're not talking about what happened, there we went from up to 120. We'd be talking about in excess of $200, maybe $300 a barrel if the Straits of Hormuz are closed permanently or for a significant amount of time. $200+ barrel, plus $200 plus per barrel of oil is the kind of numbers we're talking about here. That would be devastating to the global economy. Strange enough, the big winner from that particular scenario would probably be the US, because they'd probably be the largest producer out there, of natural gas and oil, and they would, reap the windfall because they would not be affected in terms of their supply. Like I said, for more detail, go look at my presentation. We have more numbers there. The other danger, like I said, is probably Egypt. Egypt is an economy in a great deal of trouble. The government is extremely unpopular, and they are a neighbor to Gaza and Israel. And if should there be, some kind of major disruption in Gaza that spills over into into Egypt, that could be a significant problem for the world. I mean, we're talking in excess of 100 million people in Egypt. It would make the Syrian crisis or the Libyan crisis or the Iraqi crisis fairly significant. In fact, we add those countries of Iraq, Syria, Libya all together, they don't make up half the population of Egypt. It would be a global devastating, a global disaster of unprecedented proportions, effectively. So those are the two things that we have to worry about in terms of what could be a fallout from this particular crisis. But as long as it does not spread beyond the borders of Israel and Palestine, I don't think it will make a huge impact in terms of your investments. We saw oil prices rise, a couple of dollars at the start of this, but that's just because of the perceptions around it. There's not been any disruption or major disruption in oil and gas. There's been some disruption in gas production for Israel, but it's not a major player out there, and I think the world can adjust to that. So, like I said, stays in those borders, not a big deal. At least from a market's perspective. Humanitarian perspective, of course, it's going to be a major problem. The next thing we talk about is China's stimulus. China has come out with a stimulus package or proposed stimulus package of about $1 trillion. That's about 130, $140 billion. That's to get their economy back on track. The Chinese economy has been under a huge amount of pressure over the last little while. We've talked about it in detail. Okay, we've said the demographics don't work at the moment. The property sector is in huge trouble. Probably has to be readjusted. There needs to be structural change there to get to a point where, they're more in line with what the world deals with regards to property. The Chinese property sector, I mentioned this before, 70% of household wealth, a third of the country's GDP, far too large for China. So I do think that, there are these structural issues, but the country doesn't want to basically go to the, do something like this year, a restructuring, a downturn, without having some kind of buffering, without having some kind of stimulus coming through. And I think this is part of the stimulus that, they probably would need to basically maintain social stability, etc. $1 trillion is, a large amount of money, but it's not, I think, sufficient. There'll probably be a bit more than that over time. But it does indicate that the Chinese government is, it is acknowledging that there has to be some kind of stimulus to basically tie the country through this, difficult period. That being said, I don't know if their plans beyond this, are really going to be helpful. They still haven't, gotten their, boots off the neck of the tech sector. And looking at what's happening with AI, etc. at the moment, I'm a big fan of AI. What the Chinese government is doing right now is really counterproductive to the future growth of China. And lastly, in terms of our mainstream stories, we're looking at US CPI. We saw US CPI come in. It came at the same number as last time, 3.7. They expected them to fall to 3.6, which is a disappointment. The core CPI came down a little bit in line with expectations. Big factors in terms of what was affecting this number was shelter, as well as obviously oil prices, petroleum prices, petrol prices, gasoline prices, whatever you call it in the US. What we can draw from this is a couple of things. Firstly, inflation remains a huge issue in the US. We have not seen inflation come down and carry on going towards that 2% number. It came down, went to about 3%, and now it's bounced up and seems to be staying higher for longer. The problem with this year is that it's going to be difficult for the Fed to start reversing its interest rate hikes when inflation is higher and not falling. It wants to be 2%. If it's like, say, 3% and falling like by 0.2, 0.3% every time we look at it, people are going to be saying, okay, yeah, you can cut because it's falling. But if it's 3.7 and it's not coming down, that's a different story. And I think that's going to be, negative for the Fed. That being said, the core number was as expected. And so the market is not reacting too badly to it. I think that in terms of our expectations, I think we are coming to the end of the interest rate cycle. Maybe one more hike is probable. Beyond that, I don't see how the US can afford to keep these high interest rates for very long. The US has a huge amount of debt. We're talking in excess of $33 trillion of debt. Current, bond yields in the US, 10-year bond yields are 4.5 to 6%, 4.6%, sorry. For $1 trillion, that's 46 billion dollars per year. For 33 trillion, that is closer to $1.5 trillion per year. That's not a sustainable amount of debt servicing, even for a country as large as the US. So yeah, that is something that has to be changing reasonably soon. But these numbers, these CPI numbers, don't really help that. And finally, in our tech segment, what I want to talk about is deepfakes. Two major celebrities, Mr. Beast, which is a big YouTube celebrity. He's the biggest guy on YouTube. He often gets, tens, if not hundreds of millions of views for his videos. Has come out and shown a video that seems to be him talking about a particular scam. He's not the only one. Apparently, Tom Hanks as well has also been a victim of a deepfake, where he's out there advertising some kind of, scam as well. This is a danger that I think that we're only starting to basically acknowledge. Deepfakes have got to a point right now where it's virtually impossible to spot them. You really can't tell which is real and what is not. It's like, Photoshop, when they first started off with things like Photoshop, it was pretty easy to spot it. You can kind of make out when, a photo was, manipulated or not. Nowadays, it's virtually impossible. You can't say which photo is manipulated or not. You can have photos that showing incredible things, men fighting crocodiles, or jumping over like tall buildings and whatnot. And besides the fact that the context is ridiculous, the events are ridiculous, it looks pretty real. We've seen that in movies. The special effects have got incredibly good. And what AI has done is about that kind of level of special effects. In fact, sometimes it's even better than that to the average person for virtually no cost. And expect to be seeing a number of these particular events over the next few years or so. I think in a couple of years' time, nobody's going to trust video. Like right now, nobody actually trusts photos. Photo, unless it comes with a reliable source attached to it that vouches for its authenticity, is not trustworthy to anybody. And I think the same is going to be applied to video. Unless you have some ability to basically see that video has authority attached to it, you can basically ignore any video out there, because anything virtually now can be faked. Not just faked for almost no money. It's going to be really difficult for us to identify what's real and what's not real over the next couple of years. And that, I think, is going to have a huge impact. I mean, next year is the US presidential election. It's, I think, the first presidential election that we're going to have in the US that's going to be basically at the time of post the AI revolution. Expect to be seeing bots on places like X, on Facebook, on a number of social media outlets out there, Instagram, etc. Expect to be seeing video and audio that is basically just plain old fabrications and impossible for most people to spot. And you're probably going to be finding a lot of people getting convinced by this. A lot of the electorate in the US is quite old. They aren't up to date with the technology out there. And so, expect what's happening right now with Mr. Beast and Tom Hanks, etc., to become a huge problem, not just in the commercial sphere, but in the political sphere as well. We already started to see, stuff out of, for instance, Israel being doubted as in terms of its authenticity because of AI. And like I said, what used to be, you seeing is believing will no longer be true unless someone that you respect, a body you respect, authority you respect, that comes out and vouches for the authenticity of a particular piece of video or audio or whatever it may be. In all likelihood, in a couple of years' time, you'll just ignore it and think that this could be fake, and you'll probably be right. Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to speaking to you again next week. Cheers.